Hey there, everybody. Steve from Sphinx Moth Travels here to talk to you today about the idea that you should not wait until retirement to travel. Now, of course, I said in my last post that travel is for everybody of all ages and all health conditions and all economic statuses. That's still true, but the point here is that you should not wait until retirement to travel. You don't have to wait until that time. There can be a certain logic to it when you're older. Maybe you've saved some money, maybe your kids are grown and they're out of college, you have more time on your hands. That's all great factors. Certainly you can travel once you've retired, but the main point I want to make is that we don't know what tomorrow brings. We never do. So if you're thinking to yourself, oh gee, in 10 or 20 years, is the time when I want to travel. Well, obviously a lot can change within that time, or even 1 year. To give you an example of my wife and I, when we were planning our honeymoon in 2019, everybody told us not to go to Italy rather. I did not have a confirmed job for after our wedding. Upon our return, a lot of people said, including the people who had laid me off at the time, they said, oh, you shouldn't go, you should just wait until everything is all settled. And lo and behold, look what happened in 2020. Nobody was traveling, and especially not to Italy, where it was one of the epidemic centers of the coronavirus at that time. Nobody went to Italy for a long time. We haven't been back since. Of course, we would like to go at some point in time, but you don't know. Even though it might not have been the most economically feasible time, ideally, we've been fine, we've been okay, and we have memories that have lasted a lifetime. And both of us, by the way, were at middle age by that point. If not at that point, if that wasn't the time to travel, then when would be? So that's one point I'd like to make. And the other point is that even though it can seem ideal, when you're older, you have time, you have money, maybe somewhat less energy. Oh, okay, when you're retiring, when my parents, some years ago, with another couple, went to Ireland, my father was unable to rent a car in Ireland because he was older than 65 at the time. They had some law over there that doesn't allow Americans, no matter how long they've been driving or how many years experience or how good of a driving record they have, were not allowed to rent cars. And my father he never lets me forget that he's been driving for 40, 50 years, however long it was at the time. The solution was the other couple they were traveling with, they were younger than 65 when we were able to drive. Maybe because it's on the opposite side of the road and Ireland doesn't want a lot of older foreigners getting into car accidents. I don't know what the law is, honestly. Someday I'll find out and I'll look it up. But parents were both retired at that time. If they wanted to travel by themselves in rural Ireland, it might have been a bit of a challenge. Still possible. Maybe take a tour bus, somebody else hire a driver, perhaps. But things can change. That's part of the idea, and I understand the logic of traveling while you're young. You have more energy, more strength, and everything like that. And when you maybe the idea is that when you're retired, you have more time on your hands and more money. But anything can change within a year's time. So if you're saying to yourself, okay, in 10, 20, 30 years down the road, that's when I'm going to do all my major traveling. Well, depending on your destination, things can change geographically, politically. It's quite honestly, I lived in France for a year in college, and I haven't been back to the country since. Been to Europe, been to other parts of Europe, but I can just imagine the part of France where I lived, how much it has changed since then, and planning a trip 20 years into the future from that point, would it be the ideal thing to do? Not completely sure. I mean, things can change, as we know, that can change in a matter of months or even weeks. A beach trip in Thailand, to pick another part of the world, would look very different after its last military coup than it looked before. If you're traveling to Phuket, Thailand, if you know what it was like with all the beach vendors there and the crowds on the beaches after one military coup. All the vendors were sent home and the beaches got a lot calmer. Okay, well, traveling there is a kind of a different animal than planning a trip to Europe. But finally, retirement might not look exactly how you envision it. Even on the home front, things can change within your family obligations. You might think, oh yes, but kids are grown, or there's less for me to do if I'm older. But you don't know that. You know that things can change in an instant. There's within your family, within other parts of your life, it's very, very hard to plan that far into the future. Well, of course, health concerns can change as well, and of course, you can travel when you're retired. But the point is not to wait that long. If you have an idea for travel, someplace you'd like to go, you can plan it a year out, maybe 2 years maximum, but any more than that, it might not be feasible. So even if it seems economically infeasible, I forget the right prefix for that word, but you still want to make it happen. You still want to sit down and plan it out, all the steps of your itinerary, get concrete about it, not necessarily abstract. Oh, sure, I want to go to Asia. I want to go to Europe. I want to go to Australia, different part of the world. Be specific. Look up specific places to go and how you would get there, and that's what we can help with. Because a trip to the Maldives in 20 years from now could look very different from how it looks now, without getting into the fine details of that. I can elaborate that perhaps in a future post. So do yourself a favor, go to sphinxmothtravels.com. You might be there already if you're watching this video. Download the completely free Top 11 Travel, Health, and Safety Myths to help yourself get started with trip planning. And there'll be a lot more to come that will help you out with traveling independently. Once again, traveling independently is not necessarily about whether you travel solo or as a small group versus with a guided tour. Those are all legitimate forms of travel. Cruises, all of that, but just traveling independently in the sense of thinking for yourself and not letting other people or big businesses or travel influencers decide what is right for you to do. Everybody's different. Everybody's different when it comes to ideas about travel, and your ideas can be just as legitimate as anybody else's. Thanks for watching. SphinxMothTravels.com